Season officially starts today with the Hall of Fame game between the Texans and the Bears. So that means I got to go with my first official NFL power ranking for the 2024 NFL season. This is the preseason power rankings because the preseason officially starts next week. So this is going to be covering any offseason moves up to this point, but I will not be including any training camp takeaways, like notes about who's been standing out or who's been playing poorly in training camp so far, because training camp is still going on for 30 of the teams up until the end of this weekend. So I will include the training camp takeaways in next week's power rankings, but this will include any sort of injuries or suspensions that we've also been covered up to this point. So with that being said, the Patriots will be at number 32. They have a quarterback battle of Drake May and Jacoby Brissett with a very bad receiving core. They might have a solid defense this year, maybe good enough to win like 4 games, but their offense is, I think, certainly probably the worst offense in the entire league. Number 31 is going to be the Carolina Panthers. They haven't done much to improve over last season. They also had Rashad Penny, who just ended up retiring, which was supposed to be one of their good running backs for their team this year. So that's obviously not a good look for them. They also have Cam Sims injured for 4 games, another lineman injured for the season, and another one of their receivers, David Davis, who they ended up cutting because he also got injured. Not a good look for this Carolina Panthers team, who was already not very good. Number 30 is going to be the New York Giants. They're a pretty bad team. Obviously, they also lost defensive end Chase Cota for the rest of the season, so not a good look there. And again, their offense is atrocious. Daniel Jones is atrocious. There's really not much to say about this Giants team. It's kind of, the receiving core is not good. Malik Neighbors should be good, but again, not very good look for overall offense, especially with Darren Waller retiring in the offseason. He was supposed to be a good piece of their team. Then him retiring obviously hurts them. Number 29 is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. I do think they should be better this year than last year. They could honestly get to 7 or so wins this season. But as it stands right now, their defense is not looking good. Their offense has some potential with Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison, and James Conner, who was one of the best running backs in the league last season. So definitely think they should be a fun team to watch, but don't expect them to be very good. 28 is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders, who are not very good. Also, Michael Gallup just retired last week or something, which he was supposed to be a good wide receiver 3 for them. So losing him definitely hurts his team a little bit. And again, their quarterback battle of Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, I think both of those quarterbacks could be decent, but again, none of them is getting you, a whole lot of wins, especially with your defense being subpar, to say the least. Number 27 is going to be the Denver Broncos. They haven't really had any injuries or stuff up to this point, but again, their offense is just not very good. Their quarterback battle between Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson, and Bo Nix is a very, very sad quarterback battle, and whoever starts at any of those guys is definitely not winning more than 5 or 6 games at their ceiling, unless Bo Nix is somehow just an amazing, amazing rookie quarterback, which would be very surprising in my eyes. Number 26 is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. Mekhi Blackman is injured for the season for them, but overall they still got a solid group. The only issue here is going to be their quarterback. They got good running back in Aaron Jones, obviously good receivers in Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. The only issue is going to be, is Sam Darnold actually going to be really good, or is J.J. McCarthy going to be the starting quarterback, and is he going to be good? So definitely a battle between those two guys. If one of them can actually be a really serviceable starting quarterback, they could be an 8-9 to 9-8 team, right around 500, I think. But I don't expect either of those guys to be very good, and I think their ceiling's probably around 7 wins. Number 25 is going to be the Washington Commanders. Definitely should be better than they were last year. They got Jaden Daniels, who's probably better than Sam Howell was last year. They got Austin Eckler, who is old and washed compared to what he was 3 years ago, but I do think he's still a pretty solid running back, and they still got Brian Robinson. Overall, their offense, I think, is actually pretty solid. I think they have a chance to, their absolute ceiling is probably a 9-8 team and maybe sneaking into that wild card spot, but overall, I still think they should be a lot improved over last season. Still not a very good team, though. Number 24 is going to be the New Orleans Saints. They lost Ryan Ramczyk for the rest of the season. So he's supposed to be a good offensive lineman for them. Losing him definitely hurts. I think they'll still be a decent team. Again, kind of like the same with the Commanders. I think their ceiling's probably 9-8 or so and sneaking into that wild card spot. But if I had to guess, I would probably say around 7 or so wins for the New Orleans Saints. Number 23 is going to be the Indianapolis Colts. They lost a couple guys with Daniel Scott and Samson Ebukam for the rest of the season, so not great looks there. But overall, I do think this Colts team could be, a fun team to watch. But I don't expect them to do a whole lot. They could, again, like these other teams. I have a lot of teams that I think, their ceilings about a 9-8 or so record, but I have them, probably finishing with like 7 or so wins. But the Colts still could be a fun team to watch with Anthony Richardson for sure, as long as he's healthy. Number 22 is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. So no matter whether Russell Wilson or Justin Fields starts, they should be an improvement over Kenny Pickett. But they also lost Deontay Johnson in the receiver room, so that definitely hurts their offense still a little bit, I would say. Defense, I have no problem thinking that their defense is going to be elite defense. It's been a good defense basically the entire time Mike Tomlin has been there. I think their offense could be good, but I don't think they're going to be that good. And I think Mike Tomlin will find a way to get them to a 9-8 or so record, but still don't think they're one of the better teams in the league. But still, should be pretty fun to watch, especially if Justin Fields takes a starting role and plays really, really good. Number 21 is going to be the Cleveland Browns. Their defense should be pretty good. Their offensive line is decent. They have a couple question marks on offense, being Nick Chubb's health. We don't even know if he's going to be able to play in Week 1 or not yet, so that's definitely an issue there. They lost Brian Allen for the rest of the season already. Not a great look there. And Deshaun Watson is their starting quarterback, and he has not necessarily been good since he's been with Cleveland. The only reason they were as good as they were last year is because Joe Flacco came in and played amazing. But I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to be able to match even what 40-year-old Joe Flacco did last year. So I think overall this team is going to be worse than they were a year ago. Number 20 is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I do not have a lot of hope here for the Jags team. They lost Calvin Ridley. They did not replace him with a really good guy. I think they got Gabe Davis, but that's not a good replacement for Calvin Ridley. So overall, their offense is probably going to be a little bit worse than last year. And I do think they could go, if Trevor Lawrence fixes his turnover issues, they could probably get like 11 or so wins at the max. But the floor, I would say, is probably around 8 or so wins for them. Number 19 is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers. I think their defense is okay. It's not great for sure. The running back room is like Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, which is decent, but still not a very good running back room. Their receiving core, not very good. That's going to be a big issue. You have Justin Herbert, so maybe he can perform with a lackluster receiving core, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in him to be able to do so. If the receiving core can step up and actually be a really good receiving core this year, they definitely could be like an 11 or so, maybe even a 12-win team if the receiving core is that good. But I would expect the receiving core to definitely hold back this team quite a bit, and they finish with maybe 9 or so wins. Number 18 is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're going to be basically the same team they were last year, so I'm going to have them about the same spot they were last year, right in the middle of the pack. I do think it'll be a little bit harder to win their division, obviously, because the Atlanta Falcons have made massive improvements with their team, but I still think they could go about 9-8. I'm just not sure 9-8 is going to be good enough for them to win their division this year. Number 17 is going to be the Tennessee Titans. They have an amazing offensive group here. Tony Pollard, definitely a downgrade from Derrick Henry at running back, but still a pretty solid running back. The receiving core is amazing with D-Hop, Calvin Ridley, and Tyler Boyd. If Will Levis cannot produce with that receiving core, then he's just not going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. He was a solid quarterback last year. He had one good receiver last year, but now he has 3 really good receivers, in my opinion, and probably one of the better top 5 receiving cores in the entire league. So they have everything set up for Will Levis to succeed, and I do expect him to take a pretty big leap here in year 3 and lead the Titans to about a 9 or 10 win season and maybe sneaking into the playoffs there. Number 16 is going to be the Green Bay Packers. I think they'll probably be about the same record or so they were last year, about 10 or so wins. I don't know if they're going to really make a whole lot of improvements. Their receiving core should be improved, but their running back room, they got Josh Jacobs instead of Aaron Jones. So I think that's a little bit of a downgrade in my opinion, but it's pretty close there. I do think their defense is going to be about the same as it was last year as well. It's going to be a very similar team. I'm just not sure they're going to be able to get to the next step, at least not this season. Number 15 is going to be the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, have a lot of improvements with Kirk Cousins coming in. I think they definitely have one of the better offenses in the NFC. Their defense is pretty solid as well. I definitely think they have a solid chance to win their division. It shouldn't be that hard to get 10 wins in this division and be good enough to be the 4 seed and have a home playoff game. And with that, Kirk Cousins has not been good in the playoffs. Neither have the Falcons historically. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can even win a playoff game. But I would expect them to be the leaders of this division. Number 14 is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. I think they got a really solid team here, in my opinion. They signed a couple really good UFL guys. Marcus Sims is a receiver who I think can make a real difference on the Seattle Seahawks team, even though they already have 3 really good receivers. Of course, with DK Lockett and JSN, Marcus Sims could definitely be a good wide receiver 4 for them if he stays on this team. Also, I do think Geno Smith is a pretty solid quarterback. They got a solid defense as well. They got a new coach this year. It's definitely going to be a little bit different here for Seattle. But overall, I think this team's going to be pretty solid and be finishing around 10 or so wins. Number 13 is going to be the Chicago Bears. They obviously should be much improved over last season. Caleb Williams should be really good. They got one of the best receiving corps in the league. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze is one of the best wide receiver trios, maybe even the best wide receiver trio in the entire league. If Caleb Williams cannot produce with that receiving corps, again, kind of like Will Levis, he's just not going to be a good quarterback. They both have insanely good receiving corps, and the only reason that they're not going to succeed is if they're simply not a good quarterback. So if Caleb Williams is a good quarterback, the Chicago Bears should have no trouble winning 10 games this year, maybe even 11 or even 12, depending on how good their defense can be. Number 12 here, it's going to be the Los Angeles Rams. They got a really solid team. It's going to be mostly the same team as it was last year, but of course, they are without Aaron Donald. So the defense definitely is going to take a significant hit in that respect. But offensively, you still got Cooper Kupp and Puka and Kyren Williams. I think Puka and Kyren Williams were one of the best rookies in the league last season, so I definitely expect those guys to be much improved coming into this year. So definitely think with those improvements there, this Los Angeles Rams their offense can step up where the defense would take a step down this year. Number 11 here is going to be the Miami Dolphins. They're a pretty good team, I think, still offensively. They have OBJ now as a wide receiver 3, still some of the fastest guys in the entire league, which should help their offense be, about as dynamic as it was last season. And their defense might take a little bit of a hit, but they're still definitely, I think, going to be a 10 or so win season here for Miami. Number 10 is going to be the New York Jets. As long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy, this team should have no trouble winning at least 10 games and making a playoff spot. Then they could easily win close to 12 games, depending on how good exactly their offense is. But with Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams and Breece Hall taking another step forward, hopefully, and an amazing defense that they do have, as long as their offensive line is good and their players, especially Aaron Rodgers, stay healthy, this New York Jets team very well could be a 12-win team this year. That's probably their ceiling. But right now, probably a 10-win team will make New York Jets fans ecstatic if they can be a 10-win team and make the playoffs. Number 9, going to be the Detroit Lions. This should be a very similar team to what they were last year. I think they're probably going to be, again, one of the better teams, but obviously now they got more of a target on their back as opposed to last year being kind of an underdog. So I do think because of that, they probably will take a little bit of a step down. Also, I think their division has certainly gotten better. The Vikings, were not very good last year because of injuries. They're still not going to be very good. But the Packers are going to be about the same as they were last year, and the Bears are going to be much improved than they were last season. So I do think the Lions will have a tougher division and then because of that, probably finish with less wins, maybe 10 or 11 or so. Probably not getting to the 12 wins they had a year ago. Number 8 is going to be the Buffalo Bills. I think their defense is going to be decent. Definitely not as great as it was last year, but I think they got a solid defense still. Obviously, got Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks. I think James Cook is a pretty good running back. The receiving core is a little bit concerning. Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, and Khalil Shakir, I believe, is their top three guys there. Still, I think it's a solid receiving core, but I definitely think it's a step down, obviously, from last year because he lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. But ultimately, I do think Josh Allen will be good enough to still get this team to about 11 or so wins. Number 7 is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. Having Saquon Barkley on this team already makes it that much more better than they were last year, and they were still a solid team last season. I definitely think their defense can take a step up. If their offensive line, can still be really, really good despite losing Jason Kelsey, the Eagles can certainly be, back in that Super Bowl contender that they were just 2 seasons ago. Number 6 here is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. They have a little bit of a hole there on the wide receiver, losing Tyler Boyd. Also, there's some T. Higgins drama, whether he's not getting his extension and he wants to be traded or something like that. I do expect T. Higgins to be on the team all season. As long as Joe Burrow's healthy, their defense should be pretty good. Their offensive line is pretty solid still. As long as Burrow's healthy, I definitely think this team's going to be an 11, 12-win team. Certainly a Super Bowl contender here in the AFC. Number 5 is going to be the Dallas Cowboys. They still got one of the best teams on paper. The running back room takes a hit, losing Tony Pollard. They have Ezekiel Elliott now like the lead of that running back room, which is not a very good running back room if Ezekiel Elliott in 2024 is the lead of that room. So definitely take a little bit of a hit there. Receiving core is still pretty good with Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb. Lost Michael Gallup, but they still got some other guys in there that can be pretty solid. Their defense should still be one of the best defenses in the entire league, especially if they can stay healthy throughout the whole season. They're probably going to be, one of the top teams in the regular season, be a quote-unquote Super Bowl contender, but we all know that the Dallas Cowboys are never truly going to be a Super Bowl contender because they simply choke in the playoffs every year. Number 4, going to be the Houston Texans. They had an amazing season last year. I only expect them to get better. They got, obviously Stephon Diggs for this offense, have an amazing receiving core there with Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. CJ Stroud was an amazing rookie. He should be an even better sophomore player because he has an even better receiving game. He's a better running back with Joe Mixon. He's a good tight end still. His defense is much improved, I think, over last year. Still, they do have who is it? Nico Autry, who's going to be suspended for 6 games for them, so that's not going to be a great look for their defense at the start of the season, but he should still be a good defensive player and make a good impact for them in the second half of this season. Number 3, going to be the Baltimore Ravens. This team was obviously really good last year going to the AFC Championship game, and they have Derrick Henry on their team now, so their running back room should be much improved. The receiving room lost OBJ, but they still should have a pretty solid receiving core, I think, this year. Their defense is still one of the best in the entire league, I think, so as long as they stay healthy, they should definitely have no trouble winning their division. Probably, them and the Bengals are going to be tight in their division, but I do think the Ravens very easily could win 12 games, even up to like 14 or so games, depending on how good their offensive line is, because Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson should be in an amazing running attack game at any point in the entire game. You're going to be scared for both of them running the ball. So as long as you have a good offensive line, this team should have no trouble winning at least 12 games. Number 2, going to be the San Francisco 49ers. Definitely think they're the best team in the NFC. Again, they're going to be mostly the exact same team they were last year on paper. And because of that, I can't really have them any lower than number 2 on this list. As long as Brock Purdy still plays, really good like he's been doing, I expect this team, to have no trouble being a 12, maybe even a 13, 14 game win team, just like they have been the last couple of years. And the number 1, of course, is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they look improved over last season with adding Xavier Worthy and Marcus Hollywood-Brown. Their offense should be improved over last season, which is, kind of insane considering their offense was still pretty good. They won the Super Bowl. They only got better offensively. They got worse defensively, of course, losing L'Jarius Sneed. But as long as they can have some other secondary guys step up for them in the secondary, they should have no trouble being a 12-win team, easily winning their division. Their division is still one of the worst in football, so they should easily be able to win their division, get 12 or so wins at the bare minimum, even up to a 14, 15-win season. I do not think is completely unrealistic at all for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I would expect them to be the Super Bowl. I'm not going to say I expect them to win the Super Bowl, but I expect them to, at the very least, go to the AFC Championship game because Mahomes has done that every year of his career. But yeah, that is going to be it for the video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check back next week for an updated power rankings list. There's probably going to be a lot of movement next week because I will have the uh, training camp takeaways, even though there's only one football game this week. There's probably going to be a lot of movement for next week. But yeah, make sure to check that out and let me know your thoughts on this video.